Labor is under fire over its pledge to fund 24/7 nurses in aged care homes. During the election campaign, Anthony Albanese promised to fund 24/7 nurses in aged care facilities. It was a promise he made day after day after day.
24/7 nurses. 24/7 nurses. 24/7. 24/7 nurses. Nurses 24/7. 24/7 nurses. 24/7. Nurse in a nursing home 24/7. 24/7. Put the nurses back in the nursing homes 24/7.
You know how many nurses you'll need in order to deliver that one promise.
Look, the sector will grow.
And Labor said they'd have this in place by July 2023. That's now 3.5 weeks away. But the aged care minister, Annika Wells, can't identify when or if this promise will be fulfilled.
Your clear promise was to have all aged care facilities 24/7 registered nurses by July.
Yeah.
The coalition at the time said that's not going to happen. And now we know it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
How many are going to have 24/7 nursing? How many aren't?
Yeah, so we don't require people to report on their 24/7 nursing policy until 1 July starts.
So you don't know?
So that will open. We don't have exact figures. We've got various kind of the department's obviously in touch with the 2,700 facilities we have in the country.
Is there a guesstimate?
We have a sense. We have a working sense, but it honestly changes.
What's the working sense?
Day to day. I wouldn't want to reveal it because it changes day to day.
And it went on and it wasn't pretty. All right, let's bring in my panel now. Sky News host Paul Murray and Liz Storer. Well, I mean, Ben Fordham on radio made the point today, Paul, that, you know, that was like almost an episode from Utopia.
Yeah.
That, like, it doesn't get any... It's just embarrassing. When you hear how many times Anthony Albanese makes that commitment, you think this is something that they will deliver.
Well, they passed the legislation, but they told us like weeks into this policy that aged care homes can apply for it not to apply to them, right? So it's not going to be as total as was made out during the election. But then they said they'd do something about cost of living. You know, that doesn't apply either. What was ludicrous about that performance was she had a number. She knows the number isn't enough, which is why she wouldn't say it. But then pretended to say, oh, well, I can't say it because the number changes every day. Yeah, but there's a band. Are you halfway there? Are you 3/4 of the way there? Yeah, and then when Spizzy quite correctly turns around and says, well, what's the last number you knew? What was the number yesterday?
Yes.
Oh, well, that was a Sunday. We can't possibly. All too clever by half. And look, this is the stuff that when you're flying high on the polls doesn't matter, but when you start to wobble, it speeds up big problems when those problems start to kick in.
100%. Yeah. And Liz, why does this matter? I mean, having 24/7 nurses in aged care, this was one of Labor's central commitments because the aged care issue became very politicised. It was one of their big attacks against the Morrison government.
Yeah. And the thing is, when this came down, it was one of the recommendations in the Royal Commission into aged care. It was Labor themselves who shot themselves in the foot here because they were actually given in the recommendation by the resultant report a lot more time to put this in place, but they wanted to look like rock stars. They're the ones who chose July 2023. And it's one of those policies, and I think a lot of people would agree, that doesn't seem that onerous. When you consider a lot of these people in aged care homes are ailing, it makes sense that you would have one
It's a popular policy
on site around the clock. Just one.
Yeah.
Surely that's not too onerous. And yet that's the excuses that have been levied against this. Oh, well, it was just impossible. It was so onerous. Whereas I think for the average Australian, hearing this one measure, the idea of having one registered nurse on site, one registered nurse per one registered aged care facility,
just makes sense.
Perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
But as you're reporting today, again, congratulations, how good is she? Is also this scenario where when you're in opposition, you stitch together a whole bunch of different constituencies to form a coalition to get yourself across the line. As we saw with your reporting, you're willing to hit as low as possible, as hard as possible, and in things like aged care or the economy, you overpromise so you can stand there and say, here's the 10 things we're going to do on day one. But guess what? All the easy stuff, if it was done, would have been done by the last mob.